Hello and welcome to the Robot Wars History Podcast, where we discuss the charting, the development of the show, as well as some key teams and bots. And today we are talking about a bit of a special robot in our hearts, which is Smedz. Now, I'm your host today, Toon Ganondorf, and with me today is our special guest, Anthony Murney, who is best known for his appearance on Robot Wars as a member of the Push to Exit team. How are you going, Anthony?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, very good. Now, just a two-person episode this week. We had a series of scheduling clashes that prevented anybody else on, but we decided we would push through and get this episode on our radars, and so here we are. So, Smidzy, it's going to fit into our sort of Series 4-esque, schedule that we're sort of going through at the moment. Smidzy itself began its career in Series 3, ran through to Series 7, and during that time essentially featured a fairly consistent design. It was either one of two designs. Anthony, would you like to sort of go through some design stuff with us?
Yeah, well, with Smedzy, the main core of the design stayed the same. Basically, a four-wheel box for anyone that doesn't really know much about robots, but the jaw mechanism changed. So its first appearance was really, really good. I enjoyed that it had the jaw mechanism. Eventually, the change from that, because it changes from the jaws to then just having one wedge, like a lifting wedge. And then the next thing they decided to add on to was the disc, which, in all fairness, the disc didn't really do a lot of damage if I recall, because a lot of the fights that I seen it in, that the disc either they didn't drive the disc or the disc died. But
Yeah,
um, and another thing that I noticed with the Smidzy as well is that the wheels. So all the wheels weren't the same, like the same wheels. The two front wheels would usually be like go kart wheels, but with a bit more traction on them, and the back wheels were smooth. Now, I think that was to work with the problem that Sir Killot had, the oil problem. So they weren't like slipping all around. They had a little bit of grip. But you could see that change, like in the first incarnation of Smidzy, they were all smooth wheels.
yeah,
Going up with Smidzy, going up the when it goes up like Series 6 and 7 and stuff like that, you could see that the wheels were changed. The front wheels were more of a go kart esque, like a Dominator 2
you've
type
got
esque wheels.
yeah. If you look at the side-on shot of Smidzy in Series 5, you can actually very clearly see the difference in the wheels. I hadn't noticed that myself. But I
Yeah,
think you're right. Essentially, Smidzy, it sort of went through like an adolescence where it started with the bifocal sort of jaws. And,
mhm.
whilst that was always the design that I remembered, and it allowed them to sort of correct a wedge when inverted, as a gripping jaw, it probably wasn't that effective because there was so little that it would really be able to grab onto. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I do love the concept of it. I do love the fact that like, if it had a bit more power behind it, if it had like say like growlers type thing where it could grab on and
Yeah,
keep the grab on, but with it being competitive, I can see what their tactic was. If they had one of it was basically two wedges. If they were upside down, they could still have one wedge low to the ground, and that's great. But the problem is, seeing Smidsy's fights, when it did have a robot in its jaws, it was very, very lacking in power trying to push machines.
mm,
So see the change, way they changed to like the wedge for a while, and then keep the jaw. Like they kept moving around with the jaws. I think, in all fairness, my favorite design of the weapon system is when they had the wedge, just the
yeah.
one wedge
It's the one
type thing.
lifting. Yeah. I feel like there was a robot in the reboot who also had that wedge correcting capability, and I can't remember who it was. Uh,
That could be high five if I'm correct.
yeah, no, not high five. It was someone. Maybe it wasn't the reboot. Maybe it was Series 7. But there was somebody when they were inverted, they would just reflect their
Oh,
wedge and become wedged the other way around. I can't think of who it is, but yeah, obviously High Five was significantly inspired by Smidzy, but we'll come to that in due course. So yeah, as you mentioned, Smidzy evolved from that double wedge clamp sort of weapon to just to add the flywheel after the post weight increase. And then by Series 6, they sort of abandoned the jaws and become a straight lifter, when arguably that allowed them a lot more momentum because they were able to incorporate some forklift and a sharpened blade perhaps at the end of the lifter.
Yeah, which I think in all fairness, that was their best design, and I wish they had kept it, because with that little lifting wedge you had full control, where with the jumps, not so much.
Yeah, that's right. It allowed them to better breach ground clearances as well. Even though, as nostalgic as we may all be for the original S.M.I.D.S.Y design, it was a necessary evolution in the way that, Body Hammer was an evolution into Pussycat and, those sorts of things that happen over time. But yeah, perhaps the most S.M.I.D.S.Y, a couple of things. One is that the team met online and were, for a period of time, dubbed as entering from cyberspace as opposed to perhaps from Northern Ireland or from Dublin or from, West Sussex. They were announced as from cyberspace, which was always quite a fun little gimmick that they had. And it was one of those things that you remembered about S.M.I.D.S.Y, with its jaws and with its name and with its its internet origins, if you will.
I love the eyes, because the eyes look like a space invader, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It looked like something from out of this world. And when the team always introduced themselves, when we met on Cyberspace and stuff, I always thought it was like some alien species landed on Robot Wars to fight with them. It is a very great design, and I'm actually glad it still stuck with the eyes on each version of S.M.I.D.S.Y, because a lot of teams will change the gimmick and like abandon things like that, but with S.M.I.D.S.Y they kept the same unique look, same as Panic Attack and Firestorm and stuff like that. So yeah. I'm really happy that they kept the eyes. No matter what version, the eyes were always the big thing for S.M.I.D.S.Y, and that's something like I love the character of it. If you didn't have the eyes, for me it wouldn't be S.M.I.D.S.Y.
And that's a very good point. We were talking before we started recording about robots that capture nostalgia, even if they're not well known or not even necessarily that successful. People love robots for the nostalgia of it. And you look at robots like Revenge of Trouble and Strife, and you look at robots like 101, and you look at robots like Something. They kept true to the intention. And they kept their and like Plunderbird, they kept their elements of their trademark, and it's what makes the back year after year. And they make sure they bring the things like the Deator fur. They make sure they bring the things that make you remember who you are. It sets you apart, and it keeps you garnering that fan base. Whereas you could build a number of adequate-ish robots. Look at there's countless examples of people who've just built a number of good robots, but they're not as memorable as somebody like S.M.I.D.S.Y or somebody like 101 or Thermidor, who even perhaps if their design's not necessarily the most cutting edge, it's now we're bringing it back and we're making sure that you remember who we are. Sabretooth is another good example of keeping their same name, same yellow, same silver, that whole thing. All right,
and that's something I really respect too with teams, that they don't just change to the right. We have to make this machine more powerful and more better. They don't get rid of the gimmick. They keep the gimmick going. Yeah. And that's something I respect with them.
Now, obviously, the other defining feature of S.M.I.D.S.Y was its name, S.M.I.D.S.Y, which was an acronym standing for "Sorry, mate, I didn't see you." Now, that was a motorcyclist's phrase, and of course, the team were a bunch of bikies who, obviously the term had a fair degree of relevance and weight, and so they used it for their combat robot, which was always quite funny and quite fitting. And it's just a fun word to say, S.M.I.D.S.Y. Knowing what it stands for, and also the acronym itself is fun to say.
Yeah, something I really like about it too. It's a very memorable name. So if you're trying to talk to people like who isn't a Robot Wars fan, and it's a name you remember, like Panic Attack, S.M.I.D.S.Y, very easy names. Like for me, if you have a big complicated name, it's good for you, but you have to also remember the fan has to pronounce your name, because I strongly believe if you don't have a good name or a long name, you're going to be forgotten. If that makes, unless you are a heavy hitter like a spinner or something that does like fantastic in Robot Wars, you'll be remembered. But
Yeah.
I always believe it's the name is the key element before you actually start to like build the machine. I always think, remember the fan has to remember your name to support you.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at. Sorry, you finish.
No, sorry. And Smedz is a very cute name, and it's a very easy name to remember. Like, that's what I really should appreciate with the team that they did think of the name. It's cutesy. I don't know. It's like it's got like a bit like a character behind it.
Yeah.
Like once you talk about Smedzy, it feels like it's got a really good character.
All right, well, we got to move on to some combat stuff now. So, Smedzy obviously made its debut in the final heat of Series 3 at the end of a very packed series where we got a lot of all-stars and a lot of famous competitors made their debut. Your Hypnodiscs and your Stegosauruses and your, Bulldog Breeds and Caterkillers and everybody like that made their first appearance. Smedzy had a very quiet debut at the end of Heat P, which was a little bit of an anomaly in its lifespan.
Yeah, it like as you say, you had all these big names and stuff, and then you had Smedzy, and you're like, okay, it's kind of the hit or miss moment because like if it does bad on this, it could be forgotten. If it does well on it, it could be forgotten. But I think what Smedzy had going for it is it had its uniqueness with its jaws and its style. So it stood out a little bit more for me when I first seen appear for the first time. It was like, I like this. I like the design. I like the color scheme. I like the team, and I like the stuff behind it. As I say, to me, it looked like an alien come from outer space.
Yeah.
It's something I never seen at that time. Like with other designs, yes, we had Panic Attack with the forks and different types of stuff. It's different robots too. But this one, it seemed new, like something you never seen before, and you're really, really mesmerized by it.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an unusual blip in Smedzy's radar because Smedzy was always quite famous for only losing to the best of robots, and
to have it lose to Rattus of all robots was a little bit of a blip on its career, but it's not a great performance by Smedzy, and it's very hard to sort of put your finger on anything it does particularly wrong. It's just doesn't do very well.
Yeah, from the start of this fight, you could tell that either the back wheels were jammed, because there was a lot of radio interference. Because when it starts, you can see it like kind of like a car stalling and starting up again, and Rattus is just beating the living hell out of it, which is kind of weird because if you think about it, it shouldn't do, because Rattus doesn't have a weapon per se. It has this little flail chain in the back of it and these spikes at the front. But when it does its first attack, it throws Smedzy up in the air. And I think when Smedzy like landed with that hit, it either dislodged something with the drive system because it kept stopping and stalling. And then coming to the end of the fight, that's when Smedzy just started getting this massive life and then went straight into dead metal, I think it was. And it kind of went pants for Smedzy after that.
Yeah.
We did have that big moment that made me go, oh, this is it. This is how Smedzy's going to come back and win this. Is when Rattus decides to make friends with Dead Metal and completely gets ripped apart. I was like, this is Smedzy's moment. If it can open up the jaws and hit that exposed drive chain, it can take out Rattus. But like, unfortunately, it never worked out for it. But such a shame because like it had so much potential in this fight. Like, not saying the producers did it, but it had a very easy opponent. Like if it was working at full capacity, I know for a fact that this would have been a walk in the park for it.
I mean, that's the thing about Heat P we've discussed in, I think, previous podcasts or even just among ourselves, is that between the Heat final of this episode really should have been Smedzy versus Scarab, but they both lost in round one against robots that were significantly not as good as they were, because they had Smedzy was the most practical design and Scarab had the most impressive looking weapon, and it just seems odd that you'd lose Smidzy and Scarab in the same round that you lose, Tunturin. So it is a bit of a shame, but
Yeah.
we don't, much like Smidzy themselves, we don't dwell on Series 3. We would like to think that Smidzy would have done well in other heats, but ultimately, if they were just having problems with their radio interference and it just wasn't the right time, then there's really not much else that you can say about it. They do, however, make a really good resurgence in Series 4, where they make the heat final. Now, as far as the fights there, the first round kind of, they showed what they're about. They're saying, right, well, we're going to go on the aggression. They're not daunted by the fact they're in with a former champion. They say, right, well, let's do what we can.
Yeah, that's what I really appreciate about Smithy with this, is because they exactly what you say. They don't care. They're like, right, we need to win this, or we need to put on a good performance. And right from the get go, it like everything that was wrong for Series 3, they corrected it for this one, and I really was like rooting for Smidzy to fight this. For this battle alone, I was like, I love Panic Attack, and now you put in Smidzy. Why? Because now I don't know who to root for. It was a great performance. I'm still like, even watching it now, still to this day, it still excites me. Even though I know who wins, I still go like, Smidzy would have been perfect. For me, tactical wise, if I always believed if Panic Attack didn't have its little wedgelets on the sides, I think Smidzy would have been really good at controlling. It's really hard to pinpoint it, but like Kim Davis is a fantastic driver. There's no ways about it. But I think that was the advantage it had against Smidzy, because Smidzy kept rolling up. Like it was kind of like a mini ramp for Smidzy when it went to the second Panic Attack, which was a shame. And like if you go to the front of Panic Attack, that's you like completely done for. With the flipper,
you wonder. You've got to wonder how if they had a rematch, because obviously they fight twice. If they had fought in Series 5, where Smidzy had a flywheel, or perhaps in Extreme 2, when it's the same sort of Panic Attack, but they've got the wedge instead of the jaws. If you add jaws and a flywheel to Smidzy here, whether the fight would be different, because I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Oh, big time. Because if you think about it tactical wise, if I was driving Smidzy and I was fighting Panic Attack and I had those new setups, I would go in frontal, but I would also try and spin to the back to actually cut the wedgelets off, and then straight in for control. That's what my tactic would be. Now, saying that could not work, it probably wouldn't work, because you have to also think about it. This is Panic Attack you're taking on. So they're into the same tactics going, I know your tactics and I can counter it. So I would say if I was going to vote for that, I'd vote for Smidzy. Hands down, it would be a completely different fight. It's just a shame at this current moment in time, it wasn't meant to be, but they put on some really good performance. The flipper in this fight as well really put up a good fight too, because you have to think about it too. You have Smidzy and you have Panic Attack. You have two really good maneuverable machines.
Control bots, yeah.
Yeah. So if I was the guy driving the flipper, I'd be like, right, who do I go for first? Like, do I go for Smidzy or do I go for Panic Attack? And if you realize at this point, Panic Attack already had a reputation, so I think Smidzy and the other team were going into this going, we're not going to get out of this alive. We'd be lucky if we make second or make any performance. But this fight was really, really good from all three teams, and I really, really enjoyed that. That's what I like about three ways like this. I don't like one that's like what's not working or something silly happens. I love when all three machines put on a fantastic performance, and this fight alone was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So this obviously puts Smidzy up against Agrobot, who has got a bit of a pedigree for being the robot to defeat Razor, but we'll take that as with a grain of salt. But Smidzy really is very much just dominating Agrobot all the way through its second round fight. It briefly has a bit of a scare where its paint catches fire, But yeah, it comes across as a more compact, more in control version of Agrabot 2, and ultimately carries the day just on significant control and aggression.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. I think the downside of Agrabot was the size of it. As we know in future versions, it got the smaller. But I think it was the size of it. I also believe the wheels too. I don't know what they were made out of, like what type of material they used, but I think in all fairness, it was the wheels and the size of the machine.
Yeah,
Like,
they
this
didn't have
is
a whole lot of traction.
yeah, like this is a perfect machine for Smedz to take on. Like this is just like, you can go anywhere with this machine. You can control it into the CB zones. You could take it to the flame pit. You could even just pit it if you want. And it's perfect. And Smedz showed that in this fight, and I really really like that. It's just a shame that at Agrabot, like yes, it gets that massive hype that it beat Razor and stuff, but yeah, it's a one chance in a million. You know, like there's other machines you get knocked out with by machines you don't really know.
So I want to keep us moving along because I don't want to fall behind. The heat final, we've kind of covered it off as far as Smidzy couldn't do a whole lot to a robot of Panic Attack's design. I was always quite suspicious of the fact that they chose to drop the pit in the heat final, because they so rarely dropped the pit in Series 3 to 4. And, they drop it in the heat final because they know Panic Attack is going to go for that pitting. Smidzy itself is quite interesting because you ask yourself how would it perhaps have done in some other heats, because this is one of Smidzy's 3 heat final appearances. It's one of the only robots, not to make a semi-final, that makes so many heat finals itself. And so you ask yourself how would it perhaps have gone in some other heats. I would, just off the top of my head, I probably would have rated its chances against, or obviously Mousetrap's heat, and obviously perhaps I'd even rate it against Splinter and Eric. What do you think? Any particular that jump out at you?
I think the Eric one would be perfect for it. In all fairness, like, because of Smithy's design and at this point its driving performance and stuff, I think it would dominate any heat that it was in. It would be put into. Just this one it had to go against. It's unfortunate this one was the one with Panic Attack in it.
Yeah.
Because I think at this point, and I don't know anything about like if Smedzy went to any live events at this point. I don't know if live events were around about this roughly this point, but you can tell that the team had done some driving, like test driving and stuff. Like they got to bed the robot in drive wise. So I'm pretty confident if you stuck it into any other heat that it would put on a good performance.
Yeah.
It's just,
but as far as winning any of the heats, do you think it would have it? Mousetrap and Splinters, being the most likely. Are there any others you think they might have had a chance to actually win the heat and make the semi-finals?
I don't think it would win. I'd be shocked. In all fairness, I'm in two minds. I could say yes, it would win a heat, but I think in fairness, with the Splinter one, I think possibly not 100% sure. In fairness with that, it's just I'm thinking of Smithy's performance just in a whole, but I think it would have had some drive problems. It would have come up, something would have went wrong, just because of this performance for Series 3. Don't get me wrong, Series 4 is great, but you always know that it's still a new machine. Something could go wrong. So I can't say, yes, it will win a heat. I have a feeling that it would get to it. It would put on a great performance, but I don't think at this current moment it would win a heat.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so on to sort of the next phase in Smidzy's career, which is Extreme 1 and Series 5. What is our sort of take here? There's a lot of the fights are varying degrees of good, so we won't go through each of them individually, but it has an ill-fated partnership with something in the tag team, which does not particularly go very well. And this is a partnership that they continue into Extreme 2, and you wonder why they would. Well, I mean, I can understand why they would. They probably got along pretty well, but it makes you sad knowing that Smidzy ends up with more losses in its career than wins, and it's probably because it tries to fight with something on so many occasions.
Yeah. I think in all fairness, you're right. It's probably the team. It's like with every robot here. If you meet with a good team, you become really good friends. It doesn't matter what type of machine you have. One could be fantastic, the other could be not the best. If you have a good partnership and a good chemistry, you'll stick with that. Saying too, like I'm a fan of something. I do like the fact that two of them paired up. It's just that this pairing up with the robots that they fought, eh, I would have picked something else. I'm not thinking that I'm not saying anything bad about something. I would have put Smedzy up with another machine that could actually take the blows, if that makes sense. You know, like at least that you know that Smedzy can take a hit. It's just unfortunately something once it gets hit, either a drive chain will go or something will fall off it. So you're half power at this point if you're going into these tag team matches and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, it has a disappointing mayhem where it's basically the first time Smidzy really runs afoul of a spinner, and we'll touch on that later. But sadly, yeah, it gets pitted by Pussycat after being carved up. It's Series 5 campaign. It's the deserving 24th seed based on their performance. Unfortunately, being the 24th seed means they're up against the first seed, and they can only go so far as the heat final with Chaos 2. Gets a nice little immobilization on the 8645T in second round, using its jaws as a lifter, which ends up quite nice for them. Beast was kind of a perfect robot for Smidzy to fight, though, wouldn't you agree? It was tall and narrow and easy to tip over and broad sight on.
Yeah, this is something that, as I said, I pointed out at the beginning of this podcast. This is the moment where Smidzy's jaws work, where you have one on the ground and one up. So it's kind of stopping. They're trying to do that tactic where they're trying to stop the axe, but also try and control at the same time. It sort of worked, but it was the perfect machine for it. Like, this is the machine that you want to come up against, not Chaos 2. This is someone on your level that you can go, right, I can control this. And it did it. It was a perfect machine. I like, if like any machine at this point in time, that would be the machine I would want to fight. And it was a perfect match for it. And I love the tactics in this fight. You can tell if you really sit down and watch it. If you're watching as just a casual fan, you'll go, "Oh, it's great, Smidzy's beast." But for a tactical side of it, it was really good. You could see that they were. I think in this point we're starting to get more confident with the machine, because speaking from experience, when you're driving your robot for the first time, you're terrified. Don't want to break it. Don't want to ruin it. With this one, I think they were getting more confident with the machine, that they're going, right, we know we can take the hits. We know we're good with our tactics. I think this fight was them testing out what can we do. Like, can we go to the side of them? Can we lift them? Can we push them? You know, they're like analyzing their every fight, every move they make. And I like this This is for me, as a fan of Smithy, this is for me going, this is the start of it. Their other fights are, but this is the part where they're starting to really get confident with their machine.
Yeah, that's right. So it's been, you know, a good bit of a run, and then of course they got me with Chaos 2, and much like, you know, King B3 in Series 4 was, and you know, so many others, Smidzy was really the seed that was going to fight Chaos 2 and be the losing seed. And you know, there's a brief scare, of course, with Chaos 2 famously immobilizes itself shortly after pinning Smidzy against the sidewall. Do you have any particular opinions on whether that should or shouldn't have gone that way? If these robots were called, you know, Colossus and Smidzy as opposed to Chaos 2 and Smidzy, do you think the decision would have been any different?
Now, here's something, and I've watched this fight countless times, and I'm not basically asking yourself for this too, or anyone who could comment on this. There's a moment where Chaos 2 has the moment to flip him, and you can tell that they're trying to get him to the arena wall and flip him. But for the life of me, I was trying to think, did Smidzy's jaws break the plastic covering on Chaos 2's flipper, or is that existing damage from other fights? Because just after they had flipped him and they got caught on the wall, you can see that the plastic has popped up, but there's a massive crack in it. So at that moment when I was trying to think, did Smedzy do that damage, or was that just damage that basically Chaos 2 repaired and didn't repair properly? That's
Yeah,
always
it's quite hard to tell because you really only notice the damage when Chaos 2 flicks itself. The plastic sort of breaks free.
yeah.
I don't really know how much that impacted the ability to self-right because I've heard that so many times with the whole the flipper was damaged, but it's still the flipper is still
For
yeah.
me, this fight alone, and this is the amount of people over the years I've talked to, always argue this fight. You've got the Chaos 2 fans go, Chaos 2 won, doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
you've got the other one. Well, give it credit to Smidzy. Smidzy was still sort of moving, and if it kept on using its jaws, it would have got back onto its wheel. Chaos 2 was completely upside down, couldn't do nothing. Another thing that made me go, there's something going on here, is the house robots just sit there and do nothing. Now, we've seen in previous fights that the house robots, once a robot, doesn't matter who it is, what category it is, they come in and attack it. You can tell that either producers went, don't do nothing, or wait until it's Chaos to do something. So it's either the editing in this here, or it's very controversial. For me, at this point coming at the start of this fight, I would give it to Chaos 2. But just because it was winning, it was flipping the machine, it was very controlled until there's the one moment, and it still will confuse me to this day, is when it has Smedzy up on its flipper. Now I think the initial hit of that of Smedzy's jaws broke the plastic.
I think you're right. I do think you're right. I'm just watching it again now, and I do. There's never a time where you actually get a good glimpse at the flipper, but I do think that the initial ram of the jaws did break the plastic.
That's not I think Chaos 2 realised they screwed up, because it took them so long. They could have just flipped them there and then you can see the tactic they're going. We're trying to get them perfectly on the flipper, and then we're trying for the out of the arena.
Yeah.
And that's when it messed up, because the flipper snapped, and when they fired it, they knocked Smedzy off to the wrong angle, and it got caught in the wall. There's a lot of said to me, should have been restarted. Of course, it should have been restarted, because both machines couldn't move. You couldn't go to the judge's decision. If it did go to the judge's decision, I'd say the judges would favour Chaos 2. That's
if you went for like an eruption PP3D decision where you say, right, well, we've got to judge on what we saw.
Exactly.
We saw a little bit, but yeah. It is a shame. I mean, do you think that Smidzy should have been freed from the wall? Because there's been sort of instances before.
For me, I think the house robot should have stepped in instead of standing there and doing nothing, because I know what they were trying to do. Wait until Chaos does the miraculous self-right and throw him out the arena. But once you could see even George Francis stop, you can see that George's like, I can't do this. It won't self-right. I'm just going to stand here. I think at that moment, he even thought that the house robots would have got in, because it would have been. I would have done that. Like the ref bot should have
gone in and done what though? Freed Smidzy, or righted them back?
And maybe you nudged Chaos 2 to like self-right them, but not make it out to be like, oh, we're picking Chaos 2 and then we'll go for its first Smidzy. I think the house robots should have went in at the exact same time and self-righted both of them, or got them back on their wheels. Because it's just really, really like, you can talk about the conspiracy nut jobs. They'd be all like, this was weird. Like the robots didn't move at all. The house robots didn't move. It was restarted. There's bits being cut out of this. There's something going on. Look, the all fairness of exactly what happened. They needed it restarted. If they hadn't restarted and started just there, it went to a judge's decision, and Chaos 2 would have got it. Like, just because of the amount of flips they got before that moment.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm just watching the fight. I realise there's a 9-year-old comment from Andy Pugh from the Smidzy team, basically revealing that after the I probably did know this. After the dual immobilization, Smidzy escaped and pitted Chaos 2, but there was they'd already been immobilized for 30 seconds. If it was 45 seconds, they would have won the fight. And he basically confirmed what you said. The front armor had been broken. So
yeah. Hold on, that's up there. That's up and so. But yeah, but if it hadn't have been restarted, I think that's what it went straight to. The judges would have went Chaos 2. at that point.
Yeah. Do you think that how Smidzy would have fared against Wild Thing in the next fight?
Oh,
If
now Wild Thing
Smidzy
is.
had won?
I think Smidzy would have beat it.
Yeah.
I
It's a
honestly
tough
think
one.
it would have. It's a tough one. It'd be a very, very tough and tactical fight because you could like. Don't get me wrong. Wild Thing is just absolute a badass driver. Like, but I'm really confident that Smidzy would have got the upper hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting one to debate. I think Wild Thing would have won it, but it's certainly you can see either way.
But how close would you think that fight would be? I know, like yes, like don't get me wrong. If I had any other robot, I would be going Wild Thing. But it's just because like Smidzy's low to the ground. Yes,
Yeah.
Wild Thing is too. But if you get to the back of Wild Thing, that's your perfect moment there. Like
Yeah.
yeah. So
I mean, Wild Thing's. Well, it all comes down to how much damage Wild Thing's disc does, if any, and so that's what makes it so hard to sort of comment on. But yeah, interesting discussion point. Listeners, put your answer to Smidzy v Wild Thing in the comments below. All right, so that finishes Series 5. Then we go into Series 6, which is by far the best Smidzy fight, which is the melee with Warhog, Synthagro, and Coming-Getterix.
This, hands down, is my favorite fight of all the Smidzy fights because the way they have this at this moment, this is the weapon setup I wish they had really stuck with. It has the lifting jaw, or like the lifting wedge, and it's so good. It's so good in this fight.
Yeah, and it's the best robot here. This is 4 robots that are all above okay. Like Warhog's got a decent disc. Syntagro's got a decent flipper. Coming-Getterix have they've been around a while. They're probably not the best one here, and Smidzy of course have been around since the dawn of time as well. And Smidzy's just mopping the floor with everybody here. It's just ramming around. It's flying around, smashing people into bits and pieces. It's not at all afraid of the Coming-Getterix axe or the Warhog disc or the Syntagro flipper. It's like, you guys have all got weapons. Well, let me show you how it's done.
Yeah, and it does it so well. Like in this fight, it looks like Smidzy's just cruising. It's there's no threat to it. There's no other robot threatening it. Like sure, at one point, it's piggybacking Warhog around the place. Like it doesn't seem to be threatened. Like no one's at this point. Smidzy's is I not sitting above it, but top tier in this one fight. The other machines, yes, you're right, are good. But they have all had like problems. Like Synthagro, I think this is the first time they've appeared in Series 6. So with them two, yeah, like that, they good performance, I have to say. But the other two machines, as you say, Coming-Getterix is it could like I know first it took a good hit from Warhog when it was at not at full speed, but it could take the hit and kept on going. But Smidzy was literally the best machine on this, and this is not just because Smidzy's my favorite machine. Look at this fight. You want to show a good performance of Smidzy, get people to watch this fight.
And it just goes to show that a fight between 4 robots, none of whom are particularly big stars, can be so good. Probably because most of them are on par. Smidzy's obviously better than the other 3. But the other 3 are with Syntagro jams its flipper, which is unfortunate for them. But it's there's so much going on, and it's all on par, and it makes it quite a fun fight. And Smidzy piggybacking Warhog around is quite good, and you see elements of Kim Davis in the driving of Smidzy here, with the way they managed to take Warhog across the arena and slip them on the pit is always just a delight to me.
There's one moment in this fight, as you say, there is the pit is my one where it's like they're doing the panic attack moment. Are they going to drive into the pit? Are they going to is my worry was they didn't time it right, fell into the pit, and Warhog would just like piggyback off them and win. Which it did look like that, to be perfectly honest with you, but I was so over the moon when they hit him and got away from that. And it was like, right, okay, now it's going to go on to the next round. And in all fairness, I was fully like happy to see this machine. I was like, this could go. All fairness, this could go all the way. It's just unfortunately it met Dominator.
I know. And it does such a good job against Dominator as well. Like, I would arguably say that they are on top for the start of that fight.
Oh yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that Dominator 2 is able to hit their tire with that trademark Dominator 2 accuracy.
Yeah, it was perfect. And the other thing I also think, and a lot of people kind of miss it, because there's one big moment in this fight, and everyone always like goes and thinks about Dominator. I think when Growler went in for the full like killer blow, it also like killed Smedzy as well. Like yes, it had the tire flattened, but I think that like both machines got completely like knocked to one, like completely destroyed. Not destroyed in per se, but like the shock of that force of that house robot hitting both of them.
Yeah, Growler. Yeah.
Yeah, like.
And Smidzy's doing well to keep out of the way of the axe for so much of the start of the fight. It's a fight that you would expect would be so easy for Dominator 2 to hit just the way they did with 101. Smidzy would run up it, but Smidzy's blade, with the ground clearance, this is not a fight that Smidzy would have done well in if it still had the jaws. But because it's got the blade lifter instead, it's able to do quite well. And it really avoids the axe for so much of the fight until really that hit on the wheel, that hit on the tire. So it's a loss for Smidzy in round 2, and it's a bit of a shame too, because I would arguably say that it's probably Smidzy's best performance in terms of fight content, really. It's really, this is what Smidzy's best performance is. It gets a dominant melee, and it does really well against an all-star. Whereas its other sort of heat finals against Atomic and Chaos 2 and Panic Attack, it's been quite dominated. Even though it's reached one round further, it's not done as well. Whereas here it does quite well.
Yeah, like on all fairness, you were putting these two machines together, you'd be going, right, this is absolutely perfect for Dominator. Like exposed tires, like there's a lot of stuff that they can hit. Like yes, it's well armored on the top, but the tires are the weakness. And yeah, I really do agree. Like it held its own it held its own for a very good bit. If they hadn't got the tires, it's very, very like there's one moment that made me think if they kept hitting with the disc, they would have dislodged the link in Dominator. If they just timed it right, or even hit the where the wheels are, even though yes, the wheels are covered up and stuff, but if they kept on hitting with the disc, well, it's such a good fight. Like from both machines, like Dominator's not allowing them to turn their disc over to attack them, and like Dominator is just continuously going for the tires. You can tell the tactics in this fight. They're going, we take out the tires, that's Smidzy done. And then unfortunately, Growler come in and go, that's be friends, and completely just destroy them both. Like a lot of people I talk to argue that Smidzy was still moving and stuff. If you really look at this, both machines got completely like knocked to one side. Sure, I think even that someone had said that the bottom armor of Dominator got completely cracked because it's polycarb, I think it is. So that and hit from Growler completely cracked the bottom armor off it. That tells you the power of Growler.
Yeah.
And if that's the damage that Dominator got, imagine the damage that Smidzy, yes, it already had with his tower being flattened, but imagine that hit as well. So yeah, at that point, that's when Smidzy was completely done for. But what a performance for Smidzy to come back in Series 6. Like I said, this is starting to get better and better and better. They're starting to break their machine in, get more confident with it, and this was them, I believe, at their confident. Like they're like, we're gonna win. I think he even said it in their interview after they were saying we really thought we were gonna go further. That shows you that they were really confident. We're gonna get up here to the big leagues at this point.
Yeah.
In Series. They were just so disheartened at the end of it. But a lot of teams will kind of just give up and go on to give up and not come back. I'm so happy they came back again. But like as I said, it was a great fight.
Yeah. So now we're on to Extreme 2, and we're moving along at a good pace. It has another sad partnership with something in the tag team, and it goes much the same as its last one, although it does fight a slightly better caliber of robots, and it does a little bit better. But ultimately, I just don't think they were ever going to go particularly far with something as their partner.
There's one moment in this fight with, I think it's Mini-Morg has a disc like Smedz, only it's like a different design. I think there's one moment in the fight where Smedz basically pushing it back to its side of the arena, and Mini-Morg hits the side of Smedz, and a big spark happens. For that split second, I thought they took out the back drive of Smedz. I was so happy to see Smedz keep moving, because my worry was if the both discs hit each other, just because of its Smedz's like drive chain for the disc is above the back of the robot. If that gets hit, the chain comes off, means the disc is completely done for. So I know Mini-Morg doesn't get the reputation as the badass robot, like people kind of go, that's the Morg team. But this moment, if they had better driving, I think in all fairness that would have been a wee bit more of a challenge for Smedz. Because if it was in that booth and seeing that moment, I'd be kind of going, I'm going to leave Mini-Morg alone and go after Exterminator. I know I have history with axes, like going for my wheels. And there is a moment in this fight where it's like, that's happened again. It took out the tower, but just thankfully they missed the tower. It just hit the slot behind the tower. That's the only weakness I will say that Smedz has, like exposed wheels. Like, yes, they're armored for side, but not above. And as soon as you come up against an axe machine, that you're kind of worried. And like in all fairness, it was a good fight. Just a shame that they had I really love something, but it's just a shame they had something on their side. Because the house robots seem to go. I don't know if the house robots have like a thing where they go, we just don't like machines, or they go, we don't want Smedz going through. I don't know, because they went straight they started attacking something out of the blue, and I think at that moment Exterminator and Mini-Morg were kind of having a little bit of an argument with each other, kind of going like, are you going to go? Can you get off me, please? And Smedz comes in just to go, right, are we still fighting? What's going on? Everything's gone completely bats at this point. But yeah, like it was a good fight.
Yeah, and obviously the challenge belt, it gets through to round one, which on paper you would never have suspected, because it's it features Hypnodisc and Danton Kia, and you'd think, oh, right, well, Smedzy's going out in round one, but thanks to a very skillful, opportunistic KO on Hypnodisc, Smedzy goes through, and it has a very upsetting, if you will, fight with Terahertz in round two.
This fight makes me cry, because I was sitting going, like at this point, like Terahertz, when the axe was going, like the amount of blows that axe was doing, like it was precision. It kept going for the same wheel, and it kept going and going and going. You can tell it's kind of like the slow death for Smedz in this fight, because the more it gets hit, you can see the armor kind of bending at the top. Like the one moment the flame pit sets the top on fire. It's like, this is like the worst death.
It must have been something. It must have been something in Smedzy's paint, because it always caught fire on the top.
From what I can remember, the top of the and I could be wrong, so the comment section can tell me if I'm wrong or not. But I think the top part of it was leather. I think they actually put like leather on the top of it, because they're bikers and stuff. Because it was always the top part.
Of course.
So it was always the top that went on fire, but this moment was just pure death. You could tell that John Reed had something to prove here. He's like, I'm not stopping. Like,
yeah, well, he just got curb stomped in the first round of the All Stars, so he probably wanted to say, "Hey guys, I actually am good."
Yeah,
Series 6 is not a fluke.
Yeah, but there was so much damage in that way. Like, you can even see where the armor has been completely taken away from it, and it's a shame. Another thing I noticed in that fight was the disc didn't work. So I think, like I said before, with the Mini-Morg moment, was it happened here. The chain either came off its disc, and they couldn't have that. Because if they had the disc, and if it was me, I wouldn't have went frontal with Terahertz, I would have used the disc and kept going there, because if you go to the back of Terahertz, not the front, because the front is armored for spinners and stuff, the back part just between where the tail is, that's a perfect polycarb opening
Yeah.
there. Spinner
Yeah,
could
you're
hit
right. The
that.
disc isn't working at all. And unlike Dominator 2, Terahertz gets the wheel pretty much straight away and just relentlessly beats it into the ground.
And it was sad, like, because it was sitting going like, this moment, because like it's just so it's so cruel. It's so cruel
Yeah.
to see it. Like, you're going, come on. Like, I was like, when I seen this fight, I was like, come on, Smedzy, come on. Like, you see fights like this where you think, okay, that's Smedzy done, or that's that robot done, and then the next couple minutes, like, they get sprung back to life and they'll start like attacking the machine and win. You know, like the win you never expect. I was hoping Smedzy would do that, but when I seen like when they zoom into the damage, I was like, no, that's Smedzy dead. That's not done in this. But what a performance, like, for Terahertz. Like, they did, as I said, they were there to prove a point. It was just a shame they went after Smedzy.
Yeah. Yeah, it had to come at the expense of Smidzy. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, that's the violent death of Smidzy in Extreme 2. And then Series 7, Smidzy is seeded number 13, and it's probably fairly well deserved, because by Series 7 we don't have a whole lot of people to seed. And Smidzy by this point is, you know, 2-time Heat finalist and has had a pretty stellar Series 6, even though it didn't make the Heat final. It's a fairly deserving seed, but to be honest, it's also what we would call an opportunity seed, like a 101 in Series 4 and 5, really, and well, not Series 5, but Series 4 101, where it's up against Dominator 2, and you know, Evil Weevil. Well, my examples are not great here, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's a seed that's designed to be taken down by Panic Attack in any series after Series 5, basically. It's designed to be taken down by an up-and-comer. And that up-and-comer is Atomic, who's sat out Series 6 and Extreme 2 and had an okay Series 5 and a pretty crummy Series 4. Well, this is all about Atomic, this episode, and Smidzy is just doing its best to stay relevant.
There, in this fight alone, there's a moment in this moment that my heart just stopped for Smidzy, was when they go to try and flip the other. Well, Smidzy's pushing the other machine to the wall, and basically Atomic Beast, the sneaky boy that he is, tries to flip. And if he had been any more closer, that would have been a moment where you would have seen Smidzy go out.
Yeah, and we ended up with Cygnus X1 in the second round.
Yeah. Oh Christ, no. No harm to that machine, but like that moment made me go, please no. And then you could see that like at this point you could see that Tom's confused. He goes, will I go for Smidzy, or will I go for the other machine? Like, I'm spoiled for choice here right now. So I'm happy that Smidzy got off and it got away. But this was the stop heart moment, and I'm glad it didn't proceed to the next round.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, we were talking at the start of the episode about how there are some robots that you just love because of their novelties, and Smidzy's that, and Cygnus X1. You know, I'm sure that the team are lovely people, but it's one of the two robots that I go to, along with Colossus, that are the most generic and bland robots in the history of the show. And they're just everything that I don't like about Robot Wars. It's just like functionality and no anything else. So
yeah, you need a mixture with it. Like, you can tell that Atomic feels bad for them and going, I'll try and self-right them, and fail because of the design of the machine is so weird that the flipper can't actually get onto the machine. So it kind of just leaves it alone, and it just sits there. And it's kind of sad seeing it just sit there and lie there, look like it's dead. Like, but it's a shame that it wasn't another series after this, that they could have came back and maybe done a bit more better. But with the two machines here, they both were perfectly, like, rightly so, go on to the, and like Atomic and Smidzy are really, really good machines, and it's nice to see them go on to the next round.
Yeah, I mean, the right decisions ultimately made. Terra Turtle and Cygnus X1 should have gone out in round one, and they did. Now, there's a nice little fight against Mean Streak. Is not one that I'd watch on the highlight reel, but it's a nice little moment for Smidzy. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the fight with 8645T, where Smidzy pushes the ball and tips them just square onto their side.
Like,
and that's that's your Smidzy KO for the ages.
yeah, like with this fight's really good because like when they seen the discs hit off and the sparks, it was like, okay, this actually could be a bit of a threat. But this is where the jaw mechanism or the lifter type mechanism is at full peak. This is the design that's perfect for it. Like there's a moment where it's like it smashes into the wall and lifts it up. Like it's so good. Like this is like as you say, it's perfect. Where with the other machine I thought this is the perfect opponent for it, and this really shows its colors. Like this goes like anyone who were sitting in that fight watching that like live must have been going like rooting for Smedzy because like it's perfect. And another moment in this fight that makes me feel bad for Sergeant Bash. This is the part where Sergeant Bash should have been retired because there's a moment when he tried to go for main streak and go, "I'm gonna cut you, but I'm too slow." And then Smedzy kind of feels bad and goes, "Here, no, here, take him back, try again." And he messes again. So you're kind of going, but I'm glad that Sergeant Bash was in this thing because it had been Sir Killalot or Growler or any other machine in this, I would have been worried for Smidzy because the Hyperbots don't really they don't have the pick and choose who like, oh, I like this robot, we'll leave it alone. They kill anything. So I'm kind of happy that Bash was in this fight, but this was absolutely phenomenal for Smidzy.
Yeah, and then of course. Less phenomenal for Smidzy is the very, very swift defeat in the heat final against Atomic, where once again, for the third time in its life, second time recorded, Smidzy just goes out of the arena.
This was cruel.
Yeah.
Good on Atomic. Like this whole series for Atomic is just peak performance. This is like God tier Atomic, but like exactly the same thing. It's like Terahertz in the last one. It has to be Smidzy. Why? Like on all days, Smidzy did try their best, but it was just poetic.
Much like pretty much all of Smidzy's life. And it's kind of sad that Smidzy never really got a chance because they were the opportunity seed in Series 5, and Series 6 they were never going to really beat Dominator 2, and they were never going to beat Terahertz, and Series 4 they did well, but they were up against a former champion. This is really the one they're like, all right, Smidzy's considered the favourite, but we're going to stick Atomic in here with you. Like they were never going to have a chance.
This I know this is completely different tiers of it, but this kind of reminded me of, oh god, here's another version of Chaos 2. Like if Chaos 2 had been still going, this would have been another Chaos 2 fight. Only this time Chaos 2 got it right.
Let's go, yeah, that's it. So for some reason, Smidzy was not in the All-Stars tournament at the end of the series. Now, it's interesting like that because we always, back when we were first discovering this and we said, so there was 7 who were included because they were in 5 wars, and that meant King Bee and Cat 3 were included, even though, Tornado wasn't. But we know Bulldog Breed was not asked at all. So there was always a suspicion that maybe literally everybody was just not included, like Thermidor, Spawn Again, Bulldog Breed, Supernova. Like Supernova and Terahertz couldn't be in it. But we know Bulldog Breed wasn't asked. And it makes you wonder whether Smidzy couldn't or just wasn't asked to be in it.
I think wasn't asked.
I suspect you're right. If Bulldog Breed wasn't asked, I suspect Smidzy wasn't asked.
Yeah. I think at this point they were like, well, okay, what's the robots that have big memorable moments and put on like that'll sell toys, sell images, posters and stuff like that. There are people who'll be talking for the ages about. It's just a shame that that Smidzy wasn't in there because Smidzy would have been perfect for it. Like if you think about it, yes, Smidzy hasn't always had the best performance, but it's always like done its best. It's a little bot that could. And I do think he's been in that one so good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, play out the fight. Probably it's not nearly as fun, but King Bee, Smidzy, Pussycat, and Bearmoth. Who wins that? I suppose it becomes Pussycat and Bearmoth win that fight.
Yeah.
It becomes Bearmoth versus Panic Attack, and then it probably ends up being Bearmoth Pussycat in the final.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that.
Yeah. So it's interesting how it works. I don't think we're any worse off for not seeing Smidzy in the All-Stars, but it would have been a nice little feather in Smidsy's bow to be considered one of the All-Stars.
It would have been nice to see it. Not first for me. I think it does deserve to be in there. It's just a shame we never got to see it.
Yeah. So that's it for Smidzy in recorded TV. Now, it did make quite a few sort of a bit of a life for itself outside on the live scene until not too long ago, when we have to pay our respects, essentially.
Yeah, like this for me was the heartbreaking moment, because I actually I was actually in a call with somebody. Now my other half, my fiance, she absolutely adores Smithy. So we got the news that Smithy had a big fight with two spinners, and it got really badly damaged. As soon as I heard spinners, because I kind of have a PTSD moment every time I hear spinners after first exit. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, well, who did it come up against? And someone, it got kind of got confusion, but eventually someone said it was Apex and
Toron.
That's when I went, well, there's nothing left. There's no way that there's nothing left of it. Now, to Smidsy's credit and the team who owned it, they did pretty well. They had changed the jaws to now this little drum spinner, and it was pretty good. Like that, they were doing really well. Like from what I can recall, it was Toron who pushed them into Apex. It was Apex's Killer Blow that took out Smidzy. And then Toron came in for another hit and literally ripped the side off it and pulled all the, I think it took the wheel and the motor completely apart. And then I think there's a picture, I think even on the wiki itself, just what's left of Smidzy. And it's a heartbreaking moment for a long-term fan such as myself to see it like that. It was like, you did it when I in all fairness for me, it's when I with Glory, it didn't go out in a whimper. It did really well. That's a lot of people forget about it. A lot of people talk about it as, oh, it was a big hit and then Smidzy died. It didn't die straight away. It put up a fight, and I totally have full respect for the team to go into that fight, because once you put a spinner on your machine, you're automatically put into those spinner fights.
Yeah.
So I commend the team for it, and fair dues, because if you think about it, not a lot of people, such as myself, I wouldn't put any classic machine into the spinners nowadays.
Yeah, not against Toron and Apex, no.
If you heard it was Toron and Apex, I'd be like, oh, my arm's really sore, I'll have to drop out, I'm not feeling too well,
Yeah.
But as I said, the team were fearless, were absolutely fearless, and fair dues to them, and hopefully, I do think that it's kind of been radio silence, but I do think that's Smidzy done fighting combat wise. If it does come back, I'd say it'll come back as either a display bot or in some shape or form. But
or a how to build kit.
yeah.
Yeah. I just want to quickly mention something that I said at the start about how Smidzy made so many heat finals. It's actually true. Smidzy and Thor are the only robots to reach 3 heat finals and not win any of them. So there you go. Yeah. And of course, because Thor got a wild card, it makes Smidzy probably the most successful non-semi-finalist if you count it that way. It's just a shame that it has more losses than wins in its overall tally.
It's a shame, but as I said before, it's a little bot that could, and it'll always be remembered. In all fairness, for me, if I'm talking to a non-Robot Wars fan, Smidzy's always going to be the robot I would mention with machines, because it really impacted on me when I was younger, and even meeting the team, the previous team before they moved on to another team, Dave Smith. He's been absolutely phenomenal help for me, and it was nice to I didn't see Smidzy in person, but I did see High Five, but in all fairness, it the team, everyone who's ever owned Smidzy, they've always put their own little bit to it. In the live events, yes, it was moved to different people, but they put their own little part to it. So in fairness, a lot of people think that's it, it's dead. But I don't believe it. It'll come back in some shape or form. It just won't come back into combat. I think that's its glory fight. That's its I did my best, and I'm going to walk away from it now. You know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I hope that's the way that it would. That's the way I remember Smedz, or I want to remember Smedz.
Yeah. And so did you, on the topic of, remembering Smidzy and, commemorating its impact, did you have, you've sort of had some steps to commemorate your favourite robot yourself, haven't you?
Yes, as I said, speaking of the team, Dave Smith, he made me Antweight Smedz. Because around about the time I got an Antweight version of Foxic, known as Rusty. And it is now I've created my own YouTube series known as Antweight Anarchy, and the one robot that surprised me that won it was Smedz. So Smedz is now the current champion of Series 1, and it's holding its title until we do Series 2. So it'll be amazing if it keeps its title for Series 2. I'm hoping it will. But unfortunately, there's new spinners in this new series that are really heavy hitters. So that's great that Smedz can take them on and do really well. But yeah, it's my fiance's. I give it to my fiance to own. She's a fantastic worker, and as I say, Smedz is her all-time favorite robot. So it's only fitting to give it to her. Just the problem is she's a better driver than me. So she's beaten me so many times to the point where I'm kind of going, I think I'll give up. But it's a good challenge. It's a good thing to have that. But that's my way of keeping Smedzy's name alive. Like, yes, the heavyweight is now retired, but we'll always have those good memories, and hopefully it'll have the same character and same luck, hopefully, as the heavyweight.
So that's it for Smidzy. Great career. 9 losses, but 8 of them were to semi-finalists, 3 heat finals, and just a really memorable, never give up attitude. So much appreciation, of course, to the original team, Robin Bennett, Andy Pugh, and Mick Reed, who sadly passed away in 2018. Our gratitude to you guys for your contributions, and of course everybody else who carried Smidzy on until its own death in earlier this year or late last year. So thank you very much for joining us today, Anthony, and thank you everybody for listening, and we'll catch you for the next podcast.